What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty TikToking co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, drop the TikTok name, man.
Dave Martinson, shocking one.
Easy peasy. I bring that up because Dave, you've been posting a couple of breakdowns on TikTok, your thoughts on some releases, including Drake's Scary Hours 2 EP. Tell me about that.
Yeah, just trying to find album review. TikTok is a strange place. Usually no one speaks; they just listen to musics and put text on the screen. So I was like, I can do that. Let me see what that's like. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's always an interesting part of TikTok. I've seen NFL draft TikTok now doing the same thing where they're like doing dances and pointing at who will make the picks to the text. It's interesting strategy, but people seem to be all about it. It's all about the algorithm. You just got to get in the algorithm.
Yes, you just got to get in once.
But Scary Hours too. We're all waiting for Lover Boy Drake to drop that new album, recovering from his most recent injury. But Scary Hours 2, 3 songs. Is there anything on here that compares to the first one?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing, right? Calling it Scary Hours 2 naturally is gonna require callbacks to Scary Hours 1,
Right.
several years old at this point, 2-track joint featuring Diplomatic Community and, of course, God's Plan,
Hmm.
the second most streamed Drake song of all time, the 12th or 11th most streamed song on Spotify, period, almost 2 billion streams total. Truly a landmark Drake song that was released kind of nondescriptly again as part of a 2-track EP leading up to his album Scorpion. And I think in the case of Scary Hours 2, similar tactic, palette cleanser, get everyone ready for the upcoming album, this case Certified Lover Boy coming soon. And yeah, that's what it is. But I think in this case it's a little interesting cuz Drake hasn't been like super far away. Like More Life to Scary Hours was a longer wait than say to see Slide and Dark Lane demo tapes, and then Laugh Now Cry Later post the tapes is to Scary Hours too. So it's not like Drake's been gone, you know. So I don't know if
Yeah.
we need like the palette cleanser per se, because Laugh Now Cry Later was a successful song for him.
I mean, the guy just puts out songs. Like, I don't even think about Tootsie Slide at all. It's like, that
Nah.
is just a pure, like, zeitgeist trying to grab the TikTok trends, just like you. You know, in listening to this album, I felt like these were the most like B or C level Drake songs that he's like ever put out together. With Tootsie Slide being an F, but Lemon Pepper Freestyle stood out as just like, obviously you get Ross, who we've talked about as being like a almost can't miss on features, but that switch up in the middle kind of harkens back, or I guess it's more just like a beat drop out in the middle, kind of harkens back to like old school Drake.
Mhm.
And then he comes back in with a solid verse at the end. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good, a little long, but if that was probably the one that stood out most to me. Anything that stood out to you on here?
Yeah, I mean that's great. That's always good to hear. I believe that's the 12th collab between Drake and Rick Ross throughout their career, and none of those songs are bad. And Pepper Freestyle certainly doesn't change that up now. And yeah, it's kind of like Drake going back to the old days, getting in his bag, just laying down some bars, and that's always good fun to hear. And I think What's Next, the first track, is fun because that's just kind of more energetic Drake as far as Drake in his late 30s is when it comes to energy. I like that one. It's not like top tier banger Drake. These songs will all fade away, but like, again, there's no God's Plan here. But I still like that one a lot. Um, I think the second track though, Wants and Needs a Little Baby, that was my least favorite just because I don't know, it just felt like that. Yep, that's a Little Baby song. That sounds like everything else from last year from him, and Drake was uh, just kind of going with the flow on that one. It felt like.
Yeah. Again, these aren't. If this is what we get on Certified Lover Boy, I think it's gonna be a huge disappointment. But like you said, palette cleanser. setting the stage. Can't wait to listen to the next Drake album and either love it or hate it or somewhere in between. And if you want to follow us, hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/nostalgiapod so you can listen to that review when it comes out. And we got some more music, Dave, as well as some movies, television, award show predictions.
Whole gamut.
Yeah, we got a lot going on today. So why don't we jump right into Zara Larsson dropping her newest album, Poster Girl. Um, yeah, Zara Larsson, that's someone that was on my radar, but I know she was on yours. Tell me about it.
Yes, I've been a Zara Larsson fan for a little bit. Uh, was not up on her when that last album dropped quite a while ago at this point, early 2017. So good. But that was an album loaded with a lot of hits. I didn't become aware of her until catching her in the BBC Live Lounge YouTube video of Dua Lipa performing I Don't Give a Fuck with background vocals from Charlie XCX, Mo, Alma, and Zara Larsson. Knew who Charlie was, knew who Mo was, but that's how I learned about who Alma was, as I said last year when we talked about that album, as well as Zara. Obviously, the five of them, all European pop artists, makes sense, cool thing. You don't see stuff like that all the time. But I was like, who are these people?
Mhm.
Zara and Alma. I'm not familiar with them. And Zara Larsson, a Swedish pop star who actually has been famous for a very long time, winning the Swedish equivalent of America's Got Talent, Sweden's Got Talent when she was like 10, signing a record deal when she was 14. So she's like been in the record industry for almost 10 years at this point.
Crazy.
And that second album, as I said, that had hits. Like you can go check those stream numbers. Lush Life is approaching 1 billion on Spotify. And that's like a really catchy banger. There's a lot of bangers on that album that I do like. They're just really tight, well made pop tracks. I think, you look at those credits. She's got a lot of writers. She's got a lot of producers. It's definitely like a full team effort, music industry type thing. But the songs are still hits. I think on Poster Girl, what stood out to me is that I don't think anything jumped out to me immediately like that. I did notice though that she is writing a lot more on this third album than before, which is a nice sign. And she's been a really like vocal person on social media. She's definitely not like a sanitized celebrity. And I think if she can get her music to approach that more, I think that's a good sign. I think we're getting there with this, but I think Poster Girl, there's still moments where she's a little like overproduced. I
Mhm.
think like there was a little overuse of auto tune here and there on the album, but still some good moments for me.
Yeah, I think the comp that came to my mind, and I don't mean this in any way as a diss, but it might sound that way, is like Sia light, so to speak. Almost like her vocal range may not be all the way up to Sia, but the sound and kind of like the construction of her songs reminded me a lot of Sia's music. I thought there was a lot to like on here. I agree. I don't know if anything jumped out the way that some of those big hits from the other album did, but like it kind of ranges from like disco pop to like more like toned back R&B pop, which
Yeah.
I appreciated. And like for the R&B side, like Love Me Land, which is higher on the track order. um or then we switch it up a little bit further down the line. Look What You've Done, I thought was a standout from this album. You really get that disco feel. Very just like infectious type dance sound. So I really appreciated the variety on here, and I didn't know that she had this media presence, but I think certainly if she can start to merge and say a little bit more on her songs, I think it would go a long way to maybe making a more meaningful album, but still a joy to listen to. What stood out to you with Poster Girl?
Yeah. Just thinking to the production. Um, the title track Poster Girl, I really like that dance beat there. Um, Conversely, Wow, which had already been released
Yeah.
and is being seems to be doing numbers for her. That's produced by Marshmello, funny enough.
Hmm.
Um, Now on like the negative end of production, I Need Love. That's where like the auto tune goes too far. Like I'm not against vocoder effects. I think they can sound really cool. Think of sometime like Delicate from Taylor
Mm.
Swift on Reputation, one of the I think actual highlights off that album, right? And that's all vocoder. But in this instance, like it starts off strong and then it just never stops. And like you just kind of like overdub it because she's a strong vocalist. She doesn't really need to rely
Yeah.
on this kind of stuff. And sometimes the beats can just drown her out too. Um, on the other hand, though, like a song like "Holy Smokes," I think that one's my favorite at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, no. Wait, what song was that? "Holy Smokes" was the hook on, I believe, "Poster Girl," uh,
Hmm.
and I was like, I thought it was a really catchy hook the way she was saying that. Yeah, so I was a fan of that one. "Ruin My Life," that one's been out a
Yeah.
while, few years at this point. It's done a
That
lot
one's
of
doing
numbers because it's been
numbers.
out for a while. And that was kind of interesting. And I actually like the way she talked about that one because that one's like not the most like empowering, uplifting message.
Hmm.
But I think the way she like owns it and like that like masochism of her
Yeah.
the relationship she's singing about, like I think it still kind of fits the way the persona she has.
Yeah, ruined my life and FFF with the exclamation point. I guess it'd just be F. I thought really stood out, and I agree with ruined my life. I definitely was like taken aback a little bit, like on first listen, but I was like, how many people kind of just talk like this in terms of relationships, like just ruin me or destroy me, like those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I thought it was in line with the way people kind of talk about relationships today, for sure. And I agree. Wow, the production on that is pretty interesting with like the way the horns and the rhythm of her singing around the chorus and the instruments there is pretty uh, well done, I thought. But yeah, I mean, I think this is probably not her best album. I think there's probably some better stuff to come, especially if you look to the songs off the last one. But she's gonna be around. She's popular. She's
Yeah. Only 23 too. Again, 9 years in the
insane.
game. It's her third album, but just turned 23 in December. So Zara Larson, we'll see how big this does in the US because I think she's still not like a mega star. And she actually did speak about this a lot with the press about how she, let the momentum fade away off that second album so good. And like you have this huge international smash like Lush Life, a song that goes 10 times platinum in your home country, but also goes platinum in like 10 other countries, right?
Mhm.
And then you don't have the follow up come out on time and the momentum fades away. And she's like, I actually thought she had a really astute way to put it. She's like, I'm not Rihanna. Like the
Mm.
people aren't going to be waiting for me forever the way they would wait for someone like her. And so I felt like I just had to put this out, but also she hadn't rushed it out. And I think that that's interesting. So we'll see if this restarts, momentum of Zara Larson, the international pop star. But either way, successful artist to this point.
Yeah, I mean, she has 3 songs over 400 million views on Spotify, so
Yeah.
she's doing all right. Why don't we move on though to a little bit more established band, Kings of Leon, dropping. I think this is their 8th studio album.
Yep.
Uh, I mean, when you see yourself, that's the name of it. Um, I want to preface this by mentioning who the producer was for them on this, and the producer was a guy named Marcus Dravs, who has worked with Coldplay and Mumford and Sons, and I think that really is evident on this album because while I think there's some really interesting takes and some interesting directions that they go in, a bit of it feels meandering to me at times, and I found myself just kind of feeling like Kings of Leon really took the like Sex is on Fire type route and it's just kind of like stayed in that lane. And how far they've fallen from like Molly's Chambers, just kind of disappointing to me. At least falling from that sound, that
Uh
garage
huh.
rock sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually funny because they have like a love hate relationship with Sex is on Fire, and
Mm,
you know, is it Use Somebody?
yeah,
The
You Somebody was huge.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that's the peak of their career. Like they win Record of the Year for Use
Hmm.
Somebody. They won a few other Grammys. They got nominated for a lot around that time, and then they did their their darndest to not get those comparisons again. And that producer you mentioned, I believe they worked with him on the last album as well from 2016. Is it Walls?
Walls,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's been a while for them as a band, and they're definitely one of those more established legacy bands from the 2000s that can still drop, as we've been talking about recently. But I mean, I'm not a Kings of Leon guy, so I don't have like the best frame of reference. But for me, this definitely quite quickly blended all together and sounded like a big nothing burger.
Yeah. It's interesting because in reading reviews online, they've really ranged, and I think some people kind of see this as like the Strokes' most recent album, where they
Ah,
kind of saw like the evolution of the band and like, oh, okay, they're trying to become a little bit different. They're trying to change their style up more. They're experimenting with some sounds. Like the difference between a song like um, "Time in Disguise," which feels like this nice bass groove, and then was it Claire and Eddie, which is like this, country rock tune, kind of more to their roots, and then even something like Stormy, a song where like the drums are really washed out a bit. You can tell that they're trying their range, but it just doesn't seem to really mesh together in a way that's interesting a
do
lot of
they
the
have
time.
that? Do they have that range?
Yeah.
Nothing stood out to me. I don't know.
I think there were some moments for me, right? Like in talking about them kind of stealing some of the styles or trying on some new hats, so to speak. Um, Golden Restless Age stood out. Kind of a callback to like Future Islands type vibe with like that like bass groove that's kind of like in the background. The guitar solo that kind of came in. And it had this like slow build up, and then the guitars kind of come raging in and kind of falls back. I thought. I don't know. And I guess that was maybe more my feeling for Wave 2, which is another standout for me. How they kind of built it up to then like drop it back, drop the sound back out, and kind of create that feeling of like being caught up in a wave. But yeah, I think overall, not a memorable Kings of Leon album, and I don't know if they've had one since the Use Somebody Sex is on Fire album. I think that I don't even really remember what that
Only
album
been
was
like
called.
15 years, NBD.
Well,
Almost.
it's tough because the lead singer had some like substance abuse issues, and they that kind of I think took a lot of steam out of their momentum. And I think some people might also say that moving to that "Sex Is on Fire" type sound was a bit of like selling out from that original garage rock sound. I mean, that first album is so much heavier and real like hammering guitar type sound, like thumping drums, and now it's a bit softer and maybe just the evolution of any rock band nowadays. But is the music still interesting? Mm.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me recently was that alongside this album release, they were also releasing it as a NFT,
Mm,
and just the growing conversation of NFTs, non fungible tokens, like crypto art. It's been a big thing with NBA Top Shot and
yep.
sports memorabilia and like the trading aspect of that, but also seeing its effect on art, both positive and negative, is it's ongoing as well. And to see a major label legacy rock band get in the mix like this, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Dave, do you have a top shot yet?
No, um, it's too late.
Too late for you now.
It's too late.
If you could have one like top shot highlight, what would you want?
Well, here's the thing. From what I understand, if you actually know the game and you know what's good, what's going to happen, you can take advantage of the idiots that just like to gamble and buy sports memorabilia. So I have this allure of taking advantage of the morons, but I haven't actually done it yet. I think part of that is because Emmanuel quickly doesn't have any top shots yet. You know,
Well,
we'll see.
soon enough, I'm sure. If you want to check out or see if Kings of Leon is something that this album might be for you, check out our Nostalgia Best of 2021, where we'll definitely have a song from Kings of Leon, Zara Larsson, and Drake. Lemon Pepper from Scary Hours 2 is already on there, so check that
Oh
out.
yeah,
Why don't we move on to TV, though, Dave, and check back in with WandaVision. 9 episode run wrapping up this past Friday. Um, I think I want to kind of just start with, did WandaVision meet your expectation in terms of quality of the show, but also the, I don't know, the energy around the show, the fandom around the show? Were you surprised by any of it?
yeah. Well, I think that's the thing. You have to have the correct expectations for MCU on TV, the same way you
Mhm.
did with Star Wars on TV with The Mandalorian. and the Mandalorian did a really good job of uh, conveying expectations while also leaving you wanting more. And I think the difference with WandaVision is that there is no Baby Yoda. There is no like bomb waiting to explode on the show, right? In the case of WandaVision, and we can there's so many angles to take this after seeing the full season. In the case of WandaVision, if you're wanting to see like consequential MCU moments and earth shattering, groundbreaking things occur in the plot, you're not going to get that. And newsflash, you're not going to get that in Falcon and the Winter Soldier either. That's not what's happening here. In the case of WandaVision, I think where it did meet my expectations was the first two-thirds of the show when it was allowed to just be a TV show and also pay really interesting and generous homage to classic sitcoms of the previous decades. When the show had to put that to the side and service its greater MCU uh, requirements, I was less interested. So it really all depends on what you're watching and what you're looking for, I think, with this. And it's
Yeah.
really notable that the conversation around WandaVision, like a lot of MCU stuff, is often more focused on what's not happening, what's
Mhm.
not yet occurred. What is Kevin Feige doing next? Where is the puzzle going? What piece did he just play? Versus actually evaluating what you're watching. And again, WandaVision in the beginning was well made TV, and it's almost unfair to the show to put other things on it. On the
Mhm.
other hand, when you introduce uh, Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters of the Fox iteration of Quicksilver, you encourage this as well, right?
Yes.
So again, it really depends what angle you're coming from, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, it exceeded expectations in terms of the quality of the show because I think even when it got into like the more marvelly stuff, and certainly I think the ending was very Marvel ending. And actually I think could have been better, but the showrunner, not Kevin Feige, but uh, uh, Jack Schaefer
Yeah.
talked about in an interview how the COVID-19 pandemic has actually had made them kind of have to wrap things up quicker than they wanted, which actually affected some of the things that happened in the finale, which is a bit disappointing. Um, but I also think the fact that it got so much buzz going around it is really interesting because I mean, Wanda and Vision as their own characters,
Hmm.
I didn't really find either one really that interesting in any of the phases. And that's
I mean, they're
probably
barely given any like individual screen time, so
right.
no one will blame you.
Exactly. Like, and the one film that they did get a lot of screen time in is probably the worst Avengers movie. So, not a lot there to begin with. And the fact that I ended up really wanting to know where this show was going, how these characters and their story together was going to develop is pretty cool. Um, I think the show was always going to be about Wanda dealing with grief. And the fact that it became theories about Doctor Strange possibly
Hmm.
showing up, Mephisto, all of these
Reed
things.
Richards.
Right. It's like John Krasinski as Reed Richards in a episode of The Office that Wanda puts herself in. It's like, that these all sound great, but why don't we like kind of pull back on the expectations like you talked about? And I think that in the end actually probably hurt the perception of the show to some people, which is a bit unfair.
Yeah, totally. The thing is, to me, watching Mandalorian not advance plot from week to week at times, that was okay to me because we were still getting well made science fiction western stuff
Yeah.
happening, right? You didn't have to be invested in the greater Star Wars plot to enjoy what you were seeing week to week. And yeah, maybe when it's a quote villain of the week filler episode, ooh, it's still well made, right? It's still being television and it's cool.
Hmm.
Thing is, I don't know if the MCU has that in it. In the case of WandaVision, it was okay because we had these really obvious window dressing on the show with, again, all the sitcom homage, and going through that was excellent. But if we didn't have that, what is like MCU just doing stuff for a week gonna look like? That's what I'm worried about with Falcon now, because
Yeah.
when there's nothing special happening, I don't feel like the MCU is actually rich enough to support this in terms of standing out. And if you think about WandaVision, my least favorite stuff about it was everything that wasn't with Wanda and Vision.
Mhm.
Do I like Randall Park and Kat Dennings, like Darcy and Jimmy Woo? Of course. And Tiana Paris as Monica Rambeau, she's great. I like them. They had nothing to do with this story at all. The only reason they're there is because this is the MCU. They don't
Mhm.
actually need to be there at all. And Tyler Hayward, the acting sword director, really just devolves into a cartoony, worthless villain by the end. All of
Yeah.
that was so unnecessary. I wish the show could have actually just committed to just being about Wanda and Vision, right? But of
Yeah.
course, it can't do that because it has to serve the MCU master and stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right that it doesn't have it in it right now, but I actually feel like the direction that these next stages of Marvel is moving actually could build that out, because when I think about what kind of like structure do you need with that, is that you need like a world that people want to spend time in, and I think the X-Men and the Fantastic Four are actually perfectly set up to provide that, right? Because if you get just like the X-Men at Professor X School for the Gifted, you
Mhm.
can definitely just kind of take the playbook from the cartoon and create all these side quests if you want, or all these things that are happening episode to episode don't actually have consequence to a larger picture. Same with, I think, the Fantastic Four. Like, I think you can kind of build the same, some side episodes out with that. But yeah, with someone like Wanda and Vision, when they're doing stuff that's inconsequential, again, I have no investment in these characters beyond the fact that we saw like them in the Avengers movies, and obviously Vision being killed twice in front of Wanda is pretty horrible. But I didn't necessarily leave feeling like a huge connection to them. So it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, do I really care what you're doing the rest of the time? Not really.
Well, the thing with WandaVision for me too is the way it ends, right? There's like there's little nods. Like, oh, it's Wanda being bad. She's now the Scarlet Witch. We got the Scarlet Witch origin story.
Hmm.
Magneto's nowhere to be seen. Maybe this is a version of Scarlet Witch where she's not mutant at all, or a daughter of Magneto that already exists in the comics. That wouldn't surprise me. But I laugh when people are like, oh, maybe she's going to go bad. Maybe she'll be a villain in Doctor Strange too. Because if they wanted to do that, they could have really set that up a much better way in WandaVision.
Hmm.
But they hand wave the fact that she imprisoned a whole town of innocent people for months. They just
The
totally laugh away that way. And Monica is like, yeah, I probably would have done that too for my mom. And it's like, what the hell? Like
oh man,
I thought that was ridiculous. At least
that
lean into it.
that was really great when she was like, "They'll never know what you sacrifice." Like, what you sacrificed, you just took away 2 months of their lives.
That's the other thing too. Sacrifice what? You mean her fake husband and kids? Her not
Right.
real husband and kids? That's also kind of a sticking point for me because they're not actually real.
Right.
But in the
Yeah.
process, Vision is back. White Vision is now
Mhm.
normal Vision out there to be brought back in when they need to bring him back in. That's cool. Makes sense. They were
Sure.
going to do that
Yeah.
eventually. Sure. But like, I don't know if the beats fully land as much as they should. And I think they could have done a better job actually leaning into this just being about Wanda having a tough time. Same thing with Iron Man 3. I love Iron Man 3 because it's actually just about Tony Stark having PTSD and being fucked up.
Yep.
And when they actually lean into that and just let Tony be off the rocker a little bit, it's good. When they get away
Mhm.
from that's when the movie earns most of its detractors. So,
Yeah.
like, I have quibbles, but like, again, like, there's so much of the show that's so well done, and I
Mhm.
appreciate that and I hope they learn lessons from uh, taking these chances. And now I'm
Yeah.
just hopeful that Falcon and Winter Soldier can surprise me by being at least a little bit unconventional.
Yeah. And I think to get the finale that we did, and after getting episode 8, which just felt so poignant and so like, it made such a different point that I feel like a lot of the Marvel um, movies and stories have tried to make, which is, really exploring grief and also the meta way that they're like, you're watching a TV show during one of the most traumatic times anyone has ever lived through. And you're watching a TV show about how this woman puts herself in a TV show because that's how she coped with a lot of her trauma. It's like very meta. And then talking about like how you have to actually go back and look at it to get through it. They had the great line, what is grief if not love persevering? They had a lot of beautiful moments in that episode. And Catherine Hahn crushed it in that episode, in my opinion. And throughout the series, I thought she was fantastic. But uh, to kind of just wrap up on such a dud of a episode, it kind of felt like maybe they could have used an episode or two more just to figure it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be 9 episodes, right? Why does it have to be 9 episodes?
Falcon's only 6.
And Loki, I think, is only like 5 or 6 too. So
Mm.
it's tell the story you want to tell, but it's also okay to give yourself 10 or 11 if need be. Um, any last thoughts on WandaVision though?
As far as we know, there's no plans for a season 2 at this time. Sounds like we'll next get, of course, Wanda in Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness, as we already know, and Rambeau pop up in Captain Marvel 2.
Hmm.
Really, Monica's whole presence on this was just to set up Captain Marvel 2 a little bit and get her powers, I guess. But like
Hmm.
seeing like the scroll pop up and it's like, oh, cool, that was entirely predictable, I suppose, you know.
Yeah, there's a article on theringer.com about how this WandaVision really talks about womanhood instead of just like girl power in terms
Hmm.
of Marvel
Yeah.
comics. I thought was pretty good, so I'd recommend people give that a read to maybe build out your perspective on the show a little bit more. But Dave, why don't we switch it up? Go to the movie realm and let's talk about Night of the Kings, a foreign language film entry at the upcoming Oscars. We'll be talking about if we think it will actually get nominated in just a little bit. But this was a really intense and interesting and well shot movie that really surprised me and was just like completely terrifying and overwhelming in all sense of the words. Obviously, being foreign language, you have to get over the 1 inch barrier of the
Yeah.
subtitles. But once you do, you kind of jump into this world of this prison in Maca, the Ivory Coast, only prison I think out in the area of the country, and it's run by prisoners.
Hmm.
It has a hierarchy and a structure, and really the guards are just kind of there to kind of keep order through violence when necessary. But the rest of the time, there's this inherent social structure, which was really fascinating and created a pretty interesting story. How did you feel about Night of the Kings?
Yeah, so this played at Venice last year, then got picked up by Neon for distribution. Uh, Came out in the theaters last week, just hit VOD here. Rare for a movie from Cote d'Ivoire, aka the Ivory Coast, to get Western distribution such as this. In this instance, the foreign languages, it's both French and uh, Duya, Dyula, which is a West African language.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you said, it's pretty stark right away how it's like a inmates running the asylum type situation here. And with that like handheld camera, claustrophobic settings in this really like dense, overpopulated prison, uh, you're immediately thrown right into that. And I appreciated that like there is limited exposition in the beginning. You're just kind of told to expected to figure out what's going on from the jump. But I also found that a bit challenging towards the end because the movie is very sparse with its exposition, and it's
Mhm.
almost more dreamlike and fantastical as
Mhm.
this new prisoner gets appointed this storyteller role by his fellow men and has to keep everyone entertained for the evening under the red moon, and then he's there's tension built up constantly, and I think that's done really well. But I did struggle a little bit with the I think like the lack of forward momentum a little bit, like when we were focused on these storytelling and we'd actually like see it visualized and stuff. And sometimes it was like a little distractingly with CGI, but when we'd see that story visualized, I was a little taken aback. because it was almost so stream of conscious. And the other prisoners bring that up later. It's like, oh, your story makes no sense. The what was it, the story of the
Zuma.
Zuma King,
Yep.
Zama King,
Yeah. It was
Zama King.
I agree with the um like stream of conscious type storytelling, but I think that also feels just so realistic to a person thrown into the situation where, they are charged with murder, part of a gang, and uh, come to this prison and have to, it's super overwhelming from the first minute when he drives in and he gets out of the truck and they're just hanging out of the windows, and then he gets just thrown in, and they all turn around and look at him and kind of like run around him, and Blackbeard proclaims him the Roman, the storyteller for the night, and
Hmm.
it's just like I think the word overwhelming just came to my mind throughout, because it's even as he's telling the story, and like there's that part where the crowd of people kind of go and like follow them around, are saying like they killed that person and are like chasing
Hmm.
after them. That feels a lot like the prison in a sense, where it's just like almost like this mob in a sense of people overtaking them, and it's really claustrophobic. A lot of tight shots, a lot of close-ups, really, like, especially when Blackbeard, decides to abdicate his throne and go down and accept his fate, and it's just like the whole thing just feels so tight, like your chest is
Hmm.
kind of tight throughout. A great, a real intense sense of dread when you kind of figure out that he's telling the story for his life, so to speak. So I think it all like makes sense. I agree that some of the like the lack of exposition was, you had to kind of fill in parts of it for yourself and figure things out. But I think that was to kind of put you into this experience. And I thought it was pretty effective. Philip Lecote seems like a really talented filmmaker, someone to be keeping an eye on too.
Yeah, I'm also a fan of Stephen Tianchu, who plays Blackbeard. He was in the French film Les Miserables last year. He
Hmm.
plays the mayor in that movie. He's a pretty big part of the film. He's pretty good in that. Yeah, I think it's definitely easy to recommend because it's, I think both kind of having like these like dreamlike states, but again, just like a kind of like a raw energy.
Yeah,
Uh, so hard to replicate in movies.
definitely. And it's sitting, I believe last time I checked, at 99% Rotten Tomatoes. So
Yeah,
pretty
we'll
good
see.
reviews.
It made the Best International Film short list, which is the top 15. So we'll see if it makes the top five and actually gets nominated. Uh, so well, TBD on that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a shot to win, but nomination would be nice. Let's jump to Raya and the Last Dragon. We're going animated here. Um, Raya and the Last Dragon, released on Disney Plus, but kind of like Mulan, you had to pay to watch it
Premier
early.
access,
Yeah,
also in
Premier Access.
theaters.
Yeah, if
People are
people are
going to
going to
theaters again
theaters,
a little bit.
um, and yeah, I mean, this was just really delightful, in my opinion. I mean, I think these animated films always crush it in my opinion. I mean, even the ones that aren't so good, or don't hit as much, I think still always I find impressive. What I think stood out to me about Raya in terms of these animated films is this is probably the best action I feel like in animated films. The fight scenes felt really fun and intense, and um, more captivating than some of the other ones. I do think it's not a perfect animated film, and there's some parts that lag for me a little bit. But overall, I found it to be a really interesting and compelling story. How did you feel about Ryan the Last Dragon, though, Dave?
Yeah, I did like it a lot. This will be on Disney Plus free of charge on June 4th if you wish to wait.
Come back to
But
it.
yeah, so this is the 59th Disney animated feature, not Pixar, just Disney. So this would be the first one since Frozen 2. And it's a lot better than Frozen 2, let me tell you. Frozen 2,
Hmm.
bad. But I thought Raya ripped. I thought this was tremendous.
Hmm.
What really stood out to me is it's such a rich, lived in world with excellent character design. There's you're watching the movie and the whole time you just want more from it, and
Hmm.
you can definitely see this dawning a new IP. It's being very well received,
Definitely.
so I would not be surprised that we get more stuff in this Raya world of Kumandra. Right?
Hmm.
It's obviously really Southeast Asian inspired, but still a fantastical world. And uh, like you said, the action is good. It's the pace. The movie really moves.
Hmm.
And I actually could have done if it was a little longer because again, I wanted more time with so many aspects of this world and this story because so much of it's so interesting and feels very vivid.
Hmm.
Um, so I definitely expect us to see more Raya
Yeah.
stuff. I also was struck by the directors. You know, Don Hall. It's two directors. Don Hall is a Pixar and Disney vet, but the other
Hmm.
co-director is Carlos Lopez Estrada, who has not done animation before. He's most well known as the director of Blind Spotting with Daveed Diggs a few years back. So
Hmm.
definitely quite the entry into animation to just show up and co-direct something like this because again, it's really well made.
Yeah, I think for me, you mentioned a lot of really great things. I think thing I liked most was that the voice cast was actually true to that area, or at least to Asian actors, as this is a
Right?
movie that's obviously borrowing very heavily from Asian lore. And I think there was one non-white person or non-Asian person, one white person in the voice cast, and that was Alan Tudyk who played Tuk Tuk. Uh,
Yeah. Obviously
so
didn't notice that until I looked it up.
yeah, so I thought that was great, and I do have to say, when Aquafina first started talking, I didn't know it was her playing this role, and I was like, "Oh
Mhm.
no, this sounds like Scarlett Johansson. Like, there's no way she put herself in this kind of role again." But
That's funny.
um, yeah, I thought Aquafina as a voice actor in this was just phenomenal.
Mhm.
I think the whole voice cast is great. I mean, you get Gemma Chan, you get Benedict Wong, Kelly Marie Tran. Like
Right.
everybody in this is really talented.
I will say there was a bit of a early pushback to this, or at least outcry because this movie is largely inspired by Southeast Asian
Hmm.
stuff, but just about the whole cast is actually East Asian, with the exception of Kelly Marie Tran. So when it comes to representation, there's always ways to improve. But I am quite happy for Kelly Marie Tran. Obviously, after all she went through with abuse post Star Wars:
Hmm.
The Last Jedi, this is her, first real high profile role since then. I thought she did a really good job. I actually really liked the way they set up Raya versus Namari, voiced by
Yeah.
Gemma Chan. That relationship is really central to this movie working as an adventure film. And I think, yeah, the ending and like the whole like the lesson of like trusting
Hmm.
everyone around you. Yeah, it's a little hokey, a little thrown
Yeah.
together. And in general, like many aspects of this story are quite like archetypical, right? Like we have all these warring families and factions, and yeah, like you have to travel around to get these items, right? And you have to avoid the traps, like Indiana Jones. There's so much that's familiar too, but again, because it's so I think still richly and fully realized, and you have that strong central relationship between Namari and Raya, it all still really works, and you don't mind the convention. I actually just welcome it. I think
Hmm.
because it's so well made, and also plots for the familiar. Again, Tuk Tuk, a animal monster companion, like many Disney animated leads have had
Hmm.
with them before, right? It's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah. I think the world that they created is just so wonderful. It makes, like you said, it makes you want to explore more. And I also think the way that they set up like parallels in there, the main characters, the what, five or six that were traveling together. I mean, you get the little baby who lost her parents, then you get the big guy voiced by Benedict Wong. I think his
Right?
name is Tong.
Yeah.
And he lost his family, and kind of like how they end up like pairing up, and it kind of like subverts your expectations. Or you have obviously Raya and Namari, that showdown, but then you also have um, what's his name, Isaac Wang as Boone, who's like this guy who like lost his sister and like really wants to like see his sister again. And even though they're not sisters, you kind of know where it's going, where they're like really like kindred spirits who are, kind of torn apart by their parents' different views of the world, even though they might
Hmm.
share the same view. So I thought some of that stuff really worked really well for me. Um, and I really liked Sizu. I mean, you can just see the McDonald's like Happy Meal toys of Sizu like as we speak. It just a really lovable character.
One thing I liked about those dragons too is that they don't actually fly. They like walk on the air with like these like
Hmm.
magical like bubbles they briefly spawn to walk on. Just a cool way to visualize flight in a slightly different way than we're used to seeing.
For sure. Any last thoughts on Raya and the Last Dragon, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, going in didn't have like huge expectations for this. I think most people I talk to, it's like I don't know if I need to drop the Premier Access coin again after Mulan being a pretty uh, roundly accepted disappointment. But I would definitely advise people at least wait if you have to wait until it comes out, but don't miss it. This is really good. And I was thinking like in terms of Disney animated films of like the past 10 years or so, like other than I think Zootopia, this and Zootopia are
Yeah.
probably my favorites of the past few years. Like also you'd have the two Frozens, you'd have Big Hero 6, Wreck It Ralph 1 and
Mhm.
2, and Moana are the other ones.
Zootopia was a little slow for me. This is probably my favorite one, I'd say. Definitely worth the watch. And if you have to wait till June, wait till June, but definitely watch it when you can. Let's move on, though, to a Golden Globe winning performance. It's from Jodie Foster in The Mauritanian, the movie based off of the book uh, Guantanamo Diary by Mohamedou Ould Salahi. And it really tells his story, being um, imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay by the United States government and tortured for, what was it, like 17 years, 15
14
years?
years,
Insane.
spanning
Um,
two presidencies.
and uh, really heartbreaking tale. And then, obviously you have Jodie Foster and Shailene Woodley playing these lawyers from, I think they're the ACLU, right? I don't know if
No,
they've
I don't think
ever,
so. I think they're just
no,
from a firm, private
just
firm,
from a
right?
firm.
Yeah.
It just playing these lawyers who, pro bono are helping this guy out. And, I found this movie to be, um, I think it had a little bit of the Aaron Sorkin Trial of the Chicago 7 touch in terms of Benedict Cumberbatch's character. And maybe we'll
Mm.
talk about that a little bit more. But I think overall, I found this to be a pretty interesting watch, and just really, it gets the point across in terms of how disgusting the treatment of these people
Yeah.
was, and I definitely left just being like, man, sometimes fuck the U.S. government.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is watching the Mauritanian, which I did like. You can't help but be struck by ways this movie could have been better, and I think
Hmm.
actually could have been exceptional. Reminds me a lot of The Report from 2019, the docudrama starring Adam Driver about similar subject matter, but coming at it
Yeah.
from a different way. And in this case, the Mauritanian, the problem is that the most interesting part of the story, the most important part of the story, of course, is Mohamedou, played by Tahar Rahim, who was nominated for a Golden Globe. Um, we get away from Salahi far too much in the
Hmm.
Mauritanian. That's bad because he should be the central figure in his own story.
Of
You mentioned
course.
Benedict Cumberbatch playing, I believe it's a colonel in the military who's
Colonel Stuart
charged with,
Couch.
yeah, prosecuting Salahi at the
Hmm.
you know behest of Rumsfeld and Department of Defense and everything. And shockingly, this man of faith, who, despite having personal attachments to 9/11, he finds a conscience once he realized what's happened to Salahi and also the lack of evidence against the man. But we didn't need any of that. We really didn't need that angle at all.
No.
We could have more time with Salahi himself. The movie's better
Yeah.
for it, and
Yeah.
that's just unfortunate.
Yeah. I thought some of the most um, interesting and affecting moments were Salahi by himself in the like 8 by 8 foot cage that they allowed him to have outdoor time in, and
Right,
talking with the what was the guy
Marseille.
from Marseille, yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's great.
just such a touching way to kind of like show how his faith really propelled him through, but then also how the Marseille prisoner wasn't able to continue on, decided not to continue on based on the treatment he was
Hmm.
dealing with, and how that kind of led to this downward spiral. I thought probably the most affecting part of the movie was when they get his letter, right, about like all the treatment, and they just kind of go through and show you like the all the ways that they tortured the
Yeah.
prisoners there. And I really felt like I feel like that montage is gonna like stick in my brain, like wearing the mask, like sexually embarrassing the
Yep.
prisoners,
Mhm.
forcing them to do things and
Mock
say things.
execution on the water, all
Yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
threatening to bring his
Cold
mother into the
temperatures.
prison, and just
Mm.
terribly, terribly disturbing. Um, which is what happened. Like, yeah, at
Yeah.
least it's really disgusting.
And the thing is, it's like we almost like we build to that, right? Like
Right.
you could get all that. It's kind of like thrown at the end. This like final like 30 minutes, and
Mhm.
leading to that point, the movie like does this thing where if you don't know the real life story, you might have suspicions of Salahi and whether he's actually done it. Right? He's picked up by the U.S. government or picked up by the Mauritanian government, given to the U.S. A few months after 9/11, I believe, because his cousin was actually directly involved with Al Qaeda, and Salah he had like previous relations with Al Qaeda, and he traveled around, and it's kind of like a guilty by association thing. They called him Forrest Gump when it comes to all that,
Mhm.
and the guy who played Cumberbatch played in real life literally spoke on real life. He said that this was the case of a lot of smoke with no fire, where there actually was no evidence at all. This man had done anything or had any aspirations to do anything wrong. He just was around, suspiciously, I guess, whatever, right? Yet that obviously doesn't mean you can be jailed for 14 years without even being charged with a crime. That should go without saying. I think my issue too would be along those lines, like when he's getting interrogated, right? They're like, "Oh, well, you fought with Al Qaeda, right? You
Mhm.
were there in like the late 80s, early 90s in Afghanistan." And then Slahi's like, "Yeah, I was fighting with the Mujahideen. So were you guys, same side, right?" Because this movie's like kind of taking the docudrama angle, I think they should have hammered that home a little bit more. Because I think to
Mhm.
the average viewer, they don't really know what that means.
Right.
I think they should have good job of like saying like, "Hey, I could have been using AK-47s that you guys gave us for all you know, right? Like I
Mhm.
was fighting with you guys against the Taliban." Like
Yeah.
there was some real life history I wish they could have like hammered home a little bit, but because they want to like keep it vague, they intentionally held that back. I think they want to like keep his his guilt a mystery. And like you had that thing with Shailene Woodley where she's like, "He did it, he confessed," and she gets all hysterical about it, right? And again, there's just choices that I think prevent the movie from reaching its potential because the story was there.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's things that could have been better, but I still felt like it was pretty strong film in my opinion. And I think it's hard to like for me to envision how they would have hammered home some of those points. I guess it would have had to have been like another perspective, because in that situation where you are a prisoner who is brought to Cuba and tortured, and you're just trying to like survive at that point, to then be like, no, you guys were supplying arms to
Mhm.
these people for this conflict. It's a tough stance to ask that guy to take in that moment, I'd feel like. But yeah, maybe on the like American side, like the Stuart Couch character played by Cumberbatch could have definitely driven that home in his conversations with Zachary Levy and things like that, because they were kind of going in that direction in terms of like how they were just trying to like pin things on people without any evidence with Levy. So
Right, right.
um, yeah, I definitely I thought could have been better, but I still felt like was pretty effective. You mentioned Shailene Woodley. I, I don't know if I just like don't like her as an actress. I just didn't find her to be that strong, and it reminded me just the HBO series,
Big Little Lies.
yeah, Big Little Lies, and how I always just kind of found her performance in that to be not really that be catching either. I don't know.
She definitely hasn't had the best roles in quite a while. Like at least Big Little Lies was high profile and she
Right.
was acting along, big time actors. But like after Divergent flames out, like what Descendants is like the one like really good movie she's been in, and like was it Spectacular Now? Was it like she's been in a few things, but we're kind of far away from that at this point. It's kind of weird, right? Like
Hmm.
Like, you would have thought she would have been a bigger deal. And like again, this she's a thankless like supporting lawyer. Like
Lackey, yeah.
she's not even the Jodie Foster character,
No,
right?
and
Like this is a completely thankless role that like if you omit it from the film, nothing changes.
yeah, and that's the thing is you have Jodie Foster and Tahar Rahim and even Cumberbatch, who I thought were really strong. I mean, even Zachary Levi, I was like, okay, or is it
Yeah.
Levi? I think I keep
Yeah,
saying Levy.
reminded me of the John Hamm character in the report. It's like this is a
Yeah,
fucked up guy
right.
involved in the U.S. government.
But I was kind of like, like this is a good like look for him and putting a little range on,
Yeah,
for him. She just came across as a big dud for me, so I don't know, a little disappointing on that end, but I still think it's a it's an interesting watch, and I think you can definitely do worse in terms of some of the movies out right now.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's directed by Kevin McDonald. It's definitely his most high profile film since Last King of Scotland. Back in '06, where Forrest Whitaker won Best Actor. Like it's been a long time since he's made like I think a zeitgeisty film, and Mauritanian as a late breaking awards play. Um, you can do worse, no question.
For sure. Why don't we move on though to a sequel 23 years in the making? Not really, but
Isn't
uh,
it? It's older than that, ain't it? Oh yeah,
uh,
23,
yeah,
right?
23. Yeah, probably like 22,
Wait,
I
no,
guess.
33. It's
No,
89, 88.
33. Yeah, wow. Oh God, I can't do math.
It's
33.
older than me. I know
Yeah,
that.
it's just insane. Definitely, yeah, it's older than me too. So definitely 33. Yeah, coming to America, not coming to America, coming to America. That's how we're going to differentiate, I think, because it's kind of tough. But obviously, the Eddie Murphy classic comedy from 1988, back then directed by John Landis. This time he teams back up with Craig Brewer, who he did Dolomite with, which,
A damn Dolomite.
they seem to have a pretty good working relationship going at this point. Um, maybe we should start. What did you think of Coming to America, the original?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it till just recently. I know it's a definitely classic film in his iconic '80s run. Eddie Murphy's, iconic chart-topping run. But I just had never really seen it. Like I know it was on TV a lot, but I just had missed it. But I know it's pretty well regarded. But I did like it. I think it's a little long, but uh, it's funny. Like
Hmm.
there's a lot to like about it, and uh, I appreciated so much of like the fact that you're in New York in the 1980s about it. Like
Hmm.
there's just a lot of like likable features of it, and Eddie Murphy and also Arsenio Hall at the time are
Yep.
are hilarious. And James Earl Jones back then, he still had like the full command of his amazing voice. So like,
Hmm.
there's a lot to like, no question.
Yeah, I think it's just a fantastic comedy. Like you, I hadn't watched it all the way through. I think I'd seen it all in like bits and pieces somehow. I think I watch more TV movies than you do, and just kind of like will catch things
Mhm.
here and there. Um, but yeah, I just thought uh, the original was just fantastic. Kind of weaving this rom com type feel behind what I would put as like a true comedy that has romance features to it
Yeah.
was really really strong. And um, as we move on to the sequel, Coming to America, um, I think it doesn't quite reach those levels, but it's still a really strong sequel for being, like you said, and I incorrectly said 33 or 23 years in the making.
Mhm.
Um, and what I think I found most like amazing about it was they seemed to find a way to balance all of the original characters while bringing in obviously some new blood. They've made it about the kids and
Mhm.
the family story in some sense, and that didn't feel super like shoehorned in. It felt authentic, and kind of balancing out the old with the new. I thought they did really well. How did you feel about the sequel, Dave?
So I had a good time with it, but I was quite struck with how much it rehashes
Mm,
bits and plots from the original. Like it's to the point where it's really only made for people that are like hardcore fans of the original Coming to America. And maybe to many people that's perfectly fine. That's plenty. But I was a little surprised with how much it just kind of redoes everything. Like in the beginning, you they recreate the wake up ritual from the very beginning of the original, and this place it's like put on its head with like the daughter saying uh, "Good morning," and it's like if you hadn't like seen the original, you would have no idea why that matters. It's kind of a weird scene, right? But even like later, it's like, oh, like when now we have Tiana Taylor, who's like the bride to be, and she's
Mhm.
doing the exact same stuff as they one in the first one. Just I'm here to do whatever you command. My favorite movie is whatever your favorite movie is. Like it's like, oh wow, like
Mhm.
they really just were running things back. I was a little surprised with how on the nose some of it was.
Yeah, I think they added I think they added enough for me to feel like it was still interesting and still engaging. Um, I mean, they even kind of call themselves out around that, right? Where they're like, "Yeah, all the movies in America are just sequels that no one really wants or cares about." And I was like, I appreciate the meta ness of that. Um, eh, I guess where I'm like kind of sitting is, um, I think there was a lot to explore with Prince Akeem like coming to like grips with only having daughters. Obviously, the son being his bastard child in America um, is the plot driver. But I really wish we'd gotten more time with him, like with his own daughters, and kind of like exploring like what that means to him. That he has to like make those changes, especially when his dad was so resistant to it in the first movie, and there was like a lot of parallel there. And it feels like that kind of gets rushed at the end. Um, but I think it runs enough back and is like a true sequel where it's like, yeah, we're going to give you the same stuff, but it's still really enjoyable. What I will say, I don't really like Leslie Jones outside of SNL very much, and I thought she was like fine in this movie. Like, and that I think that says a lot about the success of it to me. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
I thought she was kind of very well cast for what they were going
Yeah,
for. Right? I mean, like little date rapey, I guess the backstory
yeah,
we learn about from how it's told to us. But I think she's pretty effective as Lavelle's mother. Um, and that stuff is kind of fun, like the whole like Queens angle to it. It was kind of this movie was shot in Atlanta, and you can tell it didn't really
yeah.
feel like we went back to New York,
No,
which is unfortunate. But there's still lots of funny moments. Right? Like we go back to the barbershop.
yeah.
Um,
Barbershop's always fun in these movies.
yeah, and like the way they're talking about stuff kind of feels like it's the voice box for Eddie pontificating as if he could have if he had done a stand-up routine where he's like, oh, there's things you can't say anymore and things that you can do now in 2020 or 2021. It's like, ah, okay, I definitely feel like that's Eddie's point of view coming across a little haphazardly interesting, but you're
Mhm.
still getting like the chances for them to do their impressions. And Arsenio same way, right? Like sexual chocolate coming back at the end. And
Yeah,
what struck me was like, oh, like you can just it's more obvious that it's Eddie Murphy doing it
yeah.
because he's a bigger guy now. Like that thought that was really funny. But I think my favorite moment is when they have the funeral
Yeah, I was gonna
for
say.
James Earl Jones before he actually dies. You have Morgan Freeman as himself,
Yep.
just narrating like some 21 Savage shit, and
No
then they
one
just
will
call,
want to have sex again. And Eddie Murphy's like, what? I
and
like
then
love that whole thing.
and then he's like, and then, ladies and gentlemen, salt and pepper. And I thought that was hilarious as they
Yeah.
obviously do like a freestyle over "What a King" for "What a
Hmm.
Man." Thought that was amazing.
Yeah, no, that I thought that whole scene was great. Yeah, I just really liked, especially after watching the first one through, and I kind of watched these in succession. It just kind of felt nice to like stay in that world for me, or if you've like loved the movie back then,
Yeah,
going back into that world was just really nice. So, um, I would say this is a success for Eddie Murphy. I mean, it's interesting for him to do something like Dolomite, where he was getting legitimate like
hmm
Oscar nomination buzz, and then
yeah,
to do something as silly as this, where probably will be talked about for, but not necessarily something people are going to be like, "Dang, Eddie
right.
Murphy."
By all accounts, this was highly watched in its
Yeah.
opening weekend. This was Paramount made, sold to Amazon. You can watch both movies on Amazon right now, as well as some other Eddie stuff, like 48 Hours. I think if anything, I would have liked more Arsenio. I wanted more Semi. Like he
Yeah.
does his full cast of characters. We get all the bringbacks, right? Like the preacher guy comes back,
Hmm.
guys at the guy at the barbershop he plays. But Semi being Semi, I feel like is kind of on the sidelines. And Semi's, I think, a great part of the original.
Hmm.
Um, Probably one of my favorite callbacks is like the training with like the sticks and stuff, the the weapons from the
Hmm.
beginning, having that back, his daughter's having it, learned it, and then at the end, that kind of then like saving the day, right? And Wesley Snipes as General Izzy, it's not again not as like revelatory as say Wesley Snipes coming back for Dolomite
Right.
in 2019, but it's still great to see Wesley and Eddie on the same screen.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I would say that this is a success for Eddie Murphy and for Amazon Studios at this point. So, shout out to Prince Akeem. But Dave, we're out.
While we're at it though,
Oh,
Eddie he's been asked this, of course, to impress. Beverly Hills Cop 4 is in development. They have been working on the script. Eddie says that once the script is done, they will make the movie, and it's being directed by the guys who did Bad Boys for Life, which actually sounds like it's a good idea because that was a very successful reintroduction of a action franchise. And the way I feel about it, Beverly Hills Cop 3, when you make a sequel of that trash, why not make more? You're going to do better.
yeah. I mean, I am completely down for another sequel. And you know what? Eddie Murphy, just keep pumping them out. Let's get
Yeah.
some more.
Do what you want.
Yeah. Everything he's doing right now seems to be going well. And speaking of going well, there are going to be some people who are going to be very happy in the next week as the Oscar nominations come out. And
March
Dave,
15th.
why don't we talk about who we think is going to get nominated? We're going to do just the major categories. We're not going to do lighting and costume. We probably aren't going to get those one. Well, those ones are actually probably fairly easy to figure out. But what feels hard is best picture, director. There's only probably one open spot. Who's going to get that? So why don't
Yeah,
we
yeah.
jump in? Why don't we start with the best picture noms? Which what feels like the locks for this upcoming Oscar noms?
Yeah, so at this point, we have nominations from SAG Awards, PGA, and the Writers Guild. Of course, the Globes has happened, and the Critics' Choice Awards also happened, but that's not as impactful on what happens with the Academy. But I think at this point, there's like a nice block of, say, 5 films that we can lock in for Best Picture: Minari, Nomadland, Trial of Chicago 7, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and One Night in Miami. They have been nominated by just about everything. Notably, Nomadland wasn't nominated for a Writers Guild nomination or SAG, but of course it won at the Globes. It won
Mhm.
at the Critics' Choice. It's considered the favorite. So like that group, so Nomadland's safe. That group, I feel like, is in Best Picture. This is a question of like how many more get picked and which movies those are. Judas and the Black Messiah, late entry, has a lot of juice as of late, but didn't get nominated for everything. Mank, same way. And then I don't know. After that, you have The Five Bloods, which is one of the oldest movies here. Sound of Metal, Borat 2, maybe. Promising Young Woman, probably in there as well. So like, I feel like we know the names at this point. There's probably not going to be any like major surprises. Like I don't think Palm Springs is going to get nominated for Best Picture. Maybe screenplay. I would be very happy if it did get screenplay, but I feel like we kind of know the general field for top contenders at this point.
Yeah, I'm trying to think here. Like, what would be a nomination that would surprise me, but I probably shouldn't be surprised at for this field? Something like if Soul made it in there. Do you
Mm,
think Soul's gonna like has any
Yeah,
shot? I could
that,
see it.
yeah, that's a good solid one actually. Soul, yep. Maybe
Uh,
News of the World, I guess, which is kind of
yeah,
love
that
intermittently.
that'd be really disappointing to me if that got in there. I also feel like Promising Young Woman. I feel like that's kind of on the edge of nominations, only because I know that there's been I think some critical backlash to it. Um, uh, I think highly lauded, but some people feel a bit problematic and maybe not totally make sense all the way through. So I can see that one maybe surprising me a bit, but yeah, it's weird because in a year where there's so much newness and change in the way everybody watched movies this year. It does kind of feel like there's just like a set group of movies that are going to get the nomination and just kind of going to roll with it.
Right.
Anything you would love to see that you don't think will get in, but would be really happy about?
Yeah, just on Promising Young Woman, it didn't get SAG, but it's gotten everything else to this point. So I think it's pretty safe for Best Picture nomination. In terms, yeah. So thinking to my list, right? Like stuff that's not going to happen, like First Cow, never
Hmm.
really, sometimes, always, stuff like that. Trying to think of like what's something that's like plausible that
Malcolm and Marie,
I don't think is plausible. I don't think it's
Pieces of
plausible.
a Woman.
Mm,
Oh,
I,
Hillbilly Elegy.
oh God, that's the thing. I think unfortunately we have to talk about that movie still. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, some there's a few things that like there's been like no juice to it, right? Like Kingsley Ben-Adir, I really thought he could have made Oscar push, but he hasn't really been nominated at all, which is unfortunate despite all the plaudits for his performance. So why could I say that would happen now?
Yeah.
Zendaya got just a Critics' Choice nomination. That's it. So it doesn't feel like she can sneak into the last Best Actress spot we've talked about as being up in the air. You know,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
maybe when we see the nominations, we'll have a better idea in a week. But there might actually be less surprise than we expect. I don't know.
Yeah. It's seeming that way. Why don't we go to Best Director, where um, I think we kind of have an idea of probably the at least three or four of them, right? So
Yeah,
Zoe Chow, David Fincher, Lee Isaac Chung, and Sorkin feel pretty safe for this, I'd say.
Zoe Chow, that's good.
Oh, Chloe, Chloe Zhao. Oh man, I'm exhausted. So my apologies to the great and Golden Globe winning Chloe Zhao. But
Yes.
yeah, those four feel pretty safe to me. But who do you got in that fifth spot, Dave?
Yeah, you said Zhao, Sorkin.
Chung and Fincher,
Yeah, I think that's it. And I think the fifth spot,
Regina King.
Regina King or Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. Um, Other than those, I don't. I think that might be it, unless The Father like really happens. That would be awfully disappointing if Florian Zeller is not her best director for The Father. We haven't seen the movie yet. Sony
Mhm.
Pictures Classics is putting the movie out, meaning they wait to the last possible moment to show it to you, so that we don't get to see that till the end of this month. But like Shaka King for best director, I don't think that's happening for Judas. Spike has been missing just as many noms as he's gotten for Defy Blood, so I doubt it. Um, and then there's other stuff we consider like a best picture, safe bet, like George C. Wolfe for Ma Rainey, and even Regina King for One Night in Miami, because those movies are stage adaptations and not the most cinematic stuff. I think that hurts the director case.
Yeah, you know,
Darius Martyr, I don't know if he's a big enough name. Sound of Metal's director.
I don't think this is something that they would take into account, but it would be pretty disheartening if we have maybe three of the best movies this year directed by black directors all miss, and there's no black directors nominated. Spike Lee, Regina King, and Shaka King, I think are
Right.
all deserving of that fifth spot. Probably not going to get it. Pretty disappointing to me.
Yeah, that's saying there's actually a lot of like really good choices, and then even someone who we don't think has any chance at all is like Paul Greengrass, who's
Hmm.
been nominated in the past.
Yep. I mean, Ron Howard, Hillbilly Elegy. Here we are talking about it again. So, um, best actress, Dave. Let's do that. I mean, Mulligan, Davis, McDormand,
Kirby.
Andra Day, Vanessa Kirby.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Uh, Davis, McDormand, and Kirby and Mulligan have been nominated by SAG, critics, and Globes. Mulligan won the Critics' Choice, which was interesting. Andra Day won for the Golden Globes. So is Andra Day like the safe pick for the fifth spot? We talked about that fifth spot before. Because of the late breaking nature of it, she was not picked at SAG. So who knows? It's like we need like more information, right? And the other Globe winner was Rosamund Pike, which we don't expect that to continue. So this might end up being pretty cut and dry with the four we've talked about plus Andra Day. Amy Adams surprisingly did get a SAG nomination in Andra Day's place, but I don't know. Like that'd be something if they ended up picking Amy Adams just because it's for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any shot for Zendaya, you think?
Don't think so. Like I said, just
Ah,
Critics' Choice to this point.
it's too bad.
Should note we're doing this right before the BAFTA nominations get announced, which is a little more information, as well as the DGAs. So um, more predicting information coming shortly. But yeah, I think it's really like we have these six names at this
Yeah.
point. We'll see.
And as we move on to Best Actor, I think the nomination field is a little bit less predictable than Best Actress, but I feel like we already know who's going to win this category as we go
Yeah,
in. You know, we have Chadwick Boseman, who is almost a certain lock to be nominated, and I would say probably win for his role in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
won twice already.
And from there, the short list for the other nominations feels like, you know, Anthony Hopkins, Riz Ahmed, Gary Oldman, Stephen Yeun, maybe Delroy Lindo, uh, you know, Kingsley Benadir, maybe.
No, that's the thing.
Mm,
Kingsley Bandier is none of the major nominations, so I don't know how you could pick it.
I would love
Um,
him to get it though.
so Chadwick, Hopkins, Riz, and Oldman have gotten SAG, Critics, and Globe nominations at this point. Stephen Yeun got SAG and Critics' Choice, didn't get Globes. Remember, Minari kind of put off to the side by the Globes, so asterisk there. But the Delroy Lindo case, we talked about it. We thought it was like really, really safe, but he's really fallen off the race, unfortunately, with only getting a Critics nomination. Um, Tom Hanks, Ben Affleck, same thing. Tahar Rahim got the Globe nomination again, not something I expect to keep going. So it feels like Stephen Yeun got in, and I think it's safe at this point.
I hope so. Definitely deserving. Check out our Minari review. All right, we're gonna do two more categories. Best Supporting Actress. Dave, Olivia Colman for The Father is the favorite.
Yep.
Um, you know, I think Amanda Seyfried feels pretty safe.
Yep.
Yu Jung Young from Minari, I
Yep.
think, is a pretty good bet. Is Glenn Close really going to get in this from Hillbilly Elegy, though?
I think so because she
Oh,
got
no.
SAG, Critics, and Globe nominations at this point. Again, we'll see what happens in a day with the BAFTAs, but it feels kind of safe, People,
Oh, no.
but like it's annoying to me because like she's not gonna win.
Yeah.
So why would we doing this?
Yeah.
Uh,
You don't have to give her this
it's
nomination.
weird too because Seyfried did not get nominated by SAG, which really surprised me.
Mhm.
That's the actors deciding too. Um, they picked Maria Bakalova instead, and she also won the Critics' Choice nomination and did not get nominated by Globe. So this one's kind of all up in the air. And of course, Jodie Foster won the other one at the
Right.
Globes. So, uh, and Helena Zengel from News of the World has been nominated twice to this point, and Ellen Burstyn got a Critics' Choice Award nomination. So this one's kind of up in the air. Definitely hard. Definitely no way of saying who's going to win. We definitely don't know that.
So if there's going to be a surprise, which I doubt there is, I could see Saoirse Ronan for Ammonite being nominated only
Okay.
because she is like that Oscar darling, you know,
Yeah.
or she just gets
Yeah.
nominated every time she's up. But I don't know if the Glenn Close of this is just putting a bad taste in my mouth. I'm thinking about her with those bug eyes and those Coke bottle
Yeah.
glasses, and it's
I mean, I'd say I like Glenn Close better than Amy Adams in Hellbell Elegy. Like, if I have to pick
yeah.
one, I'd pick that one. So, and as far
But
as
you
Ammonite
don't
goes,
you
yeah,
don't
yeah,
have to pick one.
you're right. We don't. As far as Ammonite goes, I did finally check that out, and it's like someone tried to make Portrait of a Lady on Fire, but just did not have like the chemistry angle to it. So the movie is quite flat. So I don't know if anyone's like chopping at the bit to nominate Saoirse, given how many nominations she has at such a young age.
Yeah.
But also like Helena Zengel, like it's good, but she's like 12. Do we have to nominate a 12-year-old? Like, give her like the Rising Star nomination stuff. Isn't that good enough? I don't
Well,
know.
if the performance deserves it, I guess. I
But
don't
do
know.
you think that's like a really like amazing performance for this kind of award because she's barely speaking words half the time?
Yeah, I mean, I did think she was pretty good in the movie. I don't know if I would put her above any of the top 7 people we
Right.
named, but
I just a little worried about Amanda Seyfried missing, which I think would be a big mistake. That's all.
yeah, I mean, I hope she makes it too. Loved her in Mank. But last one, Dave, best supporting actor. Daniel Kaluuya seems pretty safe.
Yep,
Just won
two
the
wins
Golden
already.
Globe. Sasha Baron Cohen
Yep.
seems pretty safe.
For
From
Chicago
there,
7, not Borat, which was the lead.
I think it's maybe a little more open. Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami,
Yep.
Paul Racy for Sound of Metal, which would
Yep.
be awesome if he got the nom. Chadwick Boseman for The Five Bloods is up there. Mark
Mhm.
Rylance, Trial of Chicago 7 seems like he might get up there. Jared Leto,
Yes.
Jared Leto, maybe. I mean, I don't know who else is in this list.
Also, I would also know Bill Murray, who was nominated by critics and Globes. And Leto, like, yeah, it's not just the Globes. He also got a SAG nomination. So it's like it's quite plausible that Jared Leto is nominated for Best Supporting Actor for The Little Things, which would be
Twistable.
insane. Um, the Chadwick Boseman double nom, getting the nom for Defy Bloods, that'd be interesting because I don't think that's a lock, but he's gotten some noms for that so far. So this one's a little hard to pin down. Um, it feels like the momentum's strictly behind Coolio winning it at this point, but
Yeah.
there's a handful of names, and like you said, Chicago 7. There's a few other guys that could make in. Probably Rylands would be the other one to sneak in there. Um, but like Paul Racy for Sound of Metal, it feels like that's kind of sputtered out after the early critics stuff, and he hasn't really kept that going. But we'll see.
Would love it if he got the nom, but
Yeah.
yeah, it really just feels like Coolio's category. So, any other categories you want to give quick
I mean,
predictions
it's
for?
kind of a little hard to pick the screenplays right now, but I mean, we do have the Writers Guild nominations. Like I said, it is kind of notable to me that Mank, Defy Bloods, Minari, and Nomadland, none of those movies got original or adapted screenplay nominations, despite we all think they're very safe Best Picture nominations. So I think that's interesting, just because predicting Best Picture might be a little more challenging this year. That's one of the things we would use, right? Um, Judas did get a Writers Guild nomination, which is a great sign. Yeah, in terms of other things I'm looking for, like Best Animated Feature, we expect Soul to win. We expect Wolfwalkers and Onward to also be there. What other two animated films do they pick? I don't know. Um, like Score, we expect Soul to win. Trent Reznor,
Mhm.
Atticus Ross. What other scores do they pick? Not really sure at the moment. Stuff like that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, and we'll be talking about anything notable next week. So stay tuned for that. And Dave, what else should the people be staying tuned for?
Well, speaking of predictions, we'll be doing our Grammy predictions. The awards are right around the corner, and we also haven't really chimed in on the snafu that was the actual Grammy nominations. Uh, so we had to
So
talk about
much
that.
bullshit.
Yeah, so plenty to chew on there. Also, Tom
Goodness.
Holland's film from the Russo brothers, their Avengers Endgame follow up on Apple TV Plus. Cherry is out. So reception, but I want to see Tom Holland being serious. Um, Music wise, you got Nick Jonas, dude. You excited? Nick Jonas solo album.
Yeah. Love Bug. Just every song, Love Bug over and over.
Also, Selena Gomez dropping a Spanish language EP, as well
Oh,
as Rose from Blackpink dropping her first solo EP.
Blackpink.
So a few things there, not as much as this week at the moment, but
We can always find stuff. So that's why you stay tuned. Hit that subscribe on soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, as well as youtube.com/nostalgiapod, at Dave Martinson on TikTok, and Twitter is Martin Swagger. We'll see you all next week.